Hello, and we're back for another of our famous Thursday morning conversations. And we're going to be delving into the topic of land mobile today. I'm delighted to have with me today Joel Schroeder, who's the director of land mobile at Intelsat. Joel, how are you doing today?
Yeah, just fine. Thank you, Mark.
So let's get into it. I mean, this is a really interesting topic right now. I mean, mobility we know has been a real target for our sector over the last few years. I mean, even though land mobile has been satellite land mobile has been around for a few decades, where is the market today, and how are you addressing and how are the requirements changing?
Well, I think probably one of the biggest drivers for how the market is evolving is that people, businesses have less and less tolerance for being disconnected and have a desire to be able to do what they do in the office or at home, anywhere they happen to be located. So, from Intelsat's perspective, we brought to market just about 3 years ago a new land mobile managed service that provides a significantly higher data rate at a lower cost on average per byte than what those traditional MSS services have delivered.
Okay, so let's go a little bit more into that. I mean, you have been obviously a capacity provider. Everybody knows the company's been going around a few sort of decades now, but obviously you've looked at sort of managed services and the launch of sort of FlexMove. Tell us about this sort
That's
of
right.
pivot and why you think it makes a big difference.
I think, yeah, the company, obviously still is in the capacity business, but we see that there is an opportunity to deliver more end-to-end solutions to the market than there has been in the past, as this demand for higher performing or higher throughput connectivity is growing. Intelsat moved into the managed services business, I'd say 5 or 6 years ago, with the introduction of the Flex platform. Flex was designed to be able to provide an end-to-end managed solution to typically service providers or resellers of satellite solutions or other kinds of solutions that use satellite as part of the enabler. The Flex platform will deliver anything from megabits per second right down to subscription plans sold by the gigabyte. The Flex platform includes all of the infrastructure, so it opens the opportunity to non traditional satellite operators or satellite service providers who don't necessarily want to make the investment in both the infrastructure or the operations of running their own satellite network. In this case, they can buy managed capacity from us and design their own services, but leverage Intelsat's satellite and terrestrial infrastructure, or they can buy a predefined subscription package in the case of Flex Move for land mobile, and use that service to connect any number of applications across for numerous markets.
Okay, I mean, tell us a little bit about the potential customers. I mean, obviously, we talk a lot about IFC and airlines, and there's a number of deals with like shipping companies. Probably, the land mobile sector is maybe harder to sort of
Yeah.
decipher in a way. I mean, where are we in terms of? I mean, what types of companies do you think will be particularly attracted to solutions like FlexMove?
So you're right. I mean, I think the land mobile market is probably one of the most diverse and fragmented marketplaces within the satellite industry. There's so many different verticals, as well as a number of horizontal markets. If you look at, say, heavy equipment, commercial vehicles, trains, and other machines, it can be used across numerous vertical markets. So, since we've launched the service, I would say that where we've gotten traction most quickly, working through our global network of solution partners, is in many of the traditional markets: government, first responders. We've seen a real take up in media over the past year. I think as the requirements for media have moved beyond one of the services that supported it for several years, the FlexMove solution has found a real niche in supporting that kind of live broadcast from remote sites. But beyond those traditional markets, where we're seeing more and more interest is in some of the industrial markets. So, heavy equipment for agriculture, construction, mining, forestry. We're seeing probably not as strong, but building interest even in the goods and material transport markets, so long-haul trucks, delivery vehicles. Again, I think many of these users are finding that the demands of their business are changing in a way that requires that they be connected everywhere they're operating. And we don't, we all know that terrestrial networks are not going to serve every customer in every location. So satellite has become more than just a complete fallback. It's become an integrated part of the connectivity solution on any of these assets. So I think we're seeing the market evolve from some of those traditional places where satellite was always very common into the heavy equipment industry, into the goods and material space, and even into the rail space to some extent.
And you talk about an evolution there, but where are we with that evolution now?
Well, with that evolution, we're seeing with the FlexMove platform going from one of the traditional land mobile services that offered a kilobit per second IP network to one that's offering megabits per second. We're seeing large players in this space already pushing out their first RFPs for satellite solutions that are on a scale that the industry hasn't seen before. So we see this trend not just in the research we've done and in conversations, we're actually starting to see it play out in reality. So the demands are evolving from what they used to be. Instead of just simple data being sent over a messaging platform to have visibility of how a machine is operating, you're talking about full interaction with the cloud for platforms or applications that are running at the cloud, sending and receiving data from a remote asset. You're talking about autonomy coming into play and a need to have visibility for awareness of what's happening around an asset. So there's a number of changes in the market that are also driving a demand for higher performing satellite capabilities and having those capabilities fully integrated into the communication platform on the asset.
Does Intelsat sort of see land mobile as one of like the most exciting segments right now? I mean, obviously Intelsat we know covers a number of different segments, and I'm sure there's lots going on in every segment, but considering the history, is land mobile really on the cusp of something new, something special here?
Yes, I think so. I mean, I think land mobile offers one of the most significant growth opportunities. I mean, obviously, maritime and aero markets are significant for Intelsat and for the satellite industry because both of those types of assets are operating in locations where the only option is usually satellite. With land mobile, you have other networks that come into play, but you also have significant gaps in the coverage that those networks offer. So the opportunity in land mobile is somewhat endless in that it could over time reach into more and more segments well beyond the ones that I've mentioned, where there's going to be an increased demand. And I think much of what will enable that to happen is continued innovation in the technology to both reduce the size and the cost of the hardware that's required to make those connections, but also evolution of how the networks are, designed and how the services are delivered.
I mean, there's so many sort of interesting follow-up questions. I've got one or two for you. In terms of like deal flow, I mean, as you said, the sectors like forestry, mining, other industrial sectors. How optimistic are you going to have a strong deal flow this year with any of those sectors, or is it still a little bit further out?
I think that there are a couple deals that could come together this year in 2023. I think that there are several other opportunities that are ripe for development. Certainly, we'll be focusing a lot of effort in that space. We've had conversations with a number of OEMs across the heavy equipment space, working in different market segments. And their demands range from sort of enhanced telematics. So still just a lot of data about what's happening on the machine or what's happening around the machine with the applications. But the volume of data that they want to receive from those machines is increased to a level that it's no longer viable to use the traditional MSS platforms. You don't necessarily need an ultra high data rate, but the volume of data has gone from tens or hundreds of megabytes to gigabytes of data being transmitted every month. And when you look at the economics of the traditional MSS platforms, it just doesn't work. The cost is exorbitant. in the KU space, because there's more capacity, the economics of the services are typically far more competitive, and it allows these users to be able to send that much more data at a significantly lower cost than what they would have, or than they would be able to on one of the MSS platforms, and potentially even a lower cost than what they've been paying for those platforms for a far lower performing service historically. But it's not just about that. Obviously, there are additional applications and other drivers well beyond just an increase in the volume of data. It's applications that can't be supported on a very low data rate or a messaging type platform.
I mean, I get the feeling, and obviously you're immersed in the market every day, but this is probably, I mean, we started the conversation by talking about, well, this market's been around for decades, but really, in many ways, it feels like it's really only just starting. I know that may be contradictory, but it feels like this is the time where we're going to see companies like Intelsat do deals, be involved in partnerships that we've never seen satellite companies involved in before. Is that a fair summing up, do you think?
I think it is, yes. And I think just what you said, I mean, it's doing deals, and I think those deals, a lot of it is about the partnerships that are formed, not just with the end customer or with the OEM or other company that may be sitting between us and the end customer, but I think it's also about the ecosystem within the satellite industry, whether it's multiple orbits, whether it's hardware manufacturers, or whether it's some of the core tech devices that enable us to do more with the networks that we operate.
And tell us a little bit. I mean, we often talk about new eras and new possibilities, opportunities. I mean, FlexMove is obviously right at the heart of what you're looking to do here. Why do you think it gives that a competitive advantage, and why do you think this is a solution that will really resonate with basically a new set of customers that you've never had before?
I mean, I think first and foremost, it's the service levels that we can offer. It's the quality of service that we can offer. It's the level of resiliency that's designed into our network. If you look at many geo operators, they will have coverage globally, but they may only have a single layer of coverage in many regions. Intelsat, with its multiple satellites in orbit, can offer 2 or 3 layers of coverage in virtually any region. It gives you a very high level of resiliency. So if you're talking about critical communications, whether it's for a first responder or a government user, or whether it's for an autonomous asset operating in a very remote location that is dependent on that connectivity to continue to do its job. And if it stops doing that job, it can result in a cost from the downtime to that customer. Having those layers of resiliency, whether it's 2 or 3 layers of geo all delivered by Intelsat, or those 2 or 3 layers also paired with an additional NGSO layer that we can bring to market through a partnership. I think it's being able to build out those solutions that offer not only the service levels and the quality of service that a customer is looking for, but also are highly reliable and have built-in redundancy to ensure that they stay connected all the time, even if there's some kind of anomaly on any one of the networks as part of that solution.
Because this is a pretty competitive market, isn't it? I mean, this
is.
I mean, there's, in some ways, this feels like one of the last big, almost frontiers for the satellite industry. I mean, there's airline deals aplenty, shipping deals aplenty, broadcast government deals, but land mobile, this is, in many ways, this is, I mean, to me, it's in many ways sort of a new market. So I imagine that it's going to be pretty competitive for you to get deals here.
It is competitive. There's a number of well-established operators like Intelsat in the market, but there's also the new space ecosystem, and they're bringing different capabilities. They're bringing more interest in satellite, I think, because of the attention they brought to the technology. But they're also, they're challenging as competitors as well. But it keeps us sharp, and it keeps us very clear on differentiating what we offer versus what they offer. and making sure that we're meeting specific needs in the market that not everybody else necessarily can.
And let's talk about those customer needs. I mean, in terms of addressing those needs and staying ahead, because it feels like customers do have higher expectations now. So how will you meet those expectations, which are clearly on the rise?
Yeah, well, it's obviously it's we're offering an end-to-end solution, so we are either reselling a hardware solution in some cases from some of the vendors that are building terminals, and because of that, we're also taking an active role in driving the design of terminals to better meet the needs of those users. Because up until now, I think you've had a lot of development for land mobility among in the terminal world among a handful of vendors, but I think the race has generally been to get to the fastest, sort of sexiest terminal in the market, but it hasn't necessarily considered all of the various levels of service that are needed to meet the needs of different customers. What a government customer may need in one location versus what a commercial vehicle operating in another location requires can be quite different. The ability or willingness to pay for a larger, more ruggedized solution versus wanting something that's smaller and lower cost needs to be considered. So, I've often challenged our, terminal partners to look at the wider market space, not just look at trying to deliver the latest, greatest, fastest terminal, but to look at how they can leverage their technology into different form factors, different levels of performance and different price points to meet a wider range of needs within the market. Because if we're only targeting the top end of the market, there's a lot of opportunity that can be missed. So I think first and foremost, it's working on getting the right hardware solutions in place to be able to address a much wider user base. From there, we can obviously scale the satellite service to whatever level is needed. We can offer a megabit per second, we can offer a 3, a 5, a 10. We can customize different service packages to meet different markets at different price points. So I think we have the ability on the network side to scale things up and down to meet the various needs of those customer groups. What we're looking for is to make sure that the devices that are required to access those markets are also available. But beyond that, I mean, you've maybe read some about Intelsat's next gen network strategy. Not only are we building next generation of software defined geo satellites, we've also announced that we've secured the authority to invest in and build a MEO constellation, although nothing's been formally announced, but we do have that as an option. But our next gen network strategy is about multiple layers, multiple orbits, so bringing together geo, NGSO, and terrestrial 5G into a single integrated network where you can have a seamless handoff between any of those networks based on what is needed by the customer in whatever location they're operating and based on the quality of service that they need to support the applications they're using in those locations. So I think to better meet customer needs over time, bringing together this sort of network of networks concept, which is truly designed and in development at this point, is going to be a significant differentiator for Intelsat. And I know we're not the only ones, pursuing this type of strategy, but I think this, combined with the kind of assets that we have available for that network, will make the service, not only more relevant to more customers, but allow us to address the varying needs within those different customer groups.
It's definitely exciting, and this network of networks concept. It's hugely ambitious, and it's going to be interesting to see. You pull it all together with services like FlexMove and stuff, because it really is the future. I mean, every conversation you have nowadays, people talk about flexibility, multi-orbit, and providing customers more seamless experiences across networks. So it'll be interesting to see how you get on. I have a couple of just very, very quick questions to end on. You mentioned a lot of verticals at the start. Can you name me one that you're particularly in the land mobile sector, obviously. Name me one that you're particularly excited about, or where you see a really strong potential for Intelsat and FlexMove.
That's a tough one. There are, I would say, agriculture is one that's very much on our mind these days, where we're seeing some opportunity. We're seeing movement among some of the key players in that market. So we think that there is some opportunity there that can be developed even starting this year. But similar solutions in that if I were to call out more the horizontal market, the heavy equipment space, I think that there are common requirements across that heavy equipment market, if you will, or let's call it heavy equipment space, that serve not only agriculture, but construction, mining, forestry. So that is an area where we think that we're kind of at an inflection point where those users, those OEMs anyway, are looking to move from the traditional very low data rate satellite solutions to something that allows them to do more in terms of the over-the-top services they offer to their customers that are often cloud-based, to support their autonomous platforms, and even to make it easier to continually update that equipment no matter where it's located by pushing those updates over the air. So all of that is leading them to seek higher performing or higher service levels, I should say, than what they've been able to obtain in the past, and to do that in a way that that meets a similar economic model for them.
And one final question: you did also mention that it could also, I mean, those verticals, I think, like agriculture, heavy machinery, we have been talking about a little bit. But you also mentioned we may play in some new verticals that we previously would not expect satellite to sort of play in. Can you sort of name me one really out there vertical where we could see a satellite or FlexMove take part in the future?
Let's see, a really out there one. You could see it playing in. I don't know if any of them are all that out there. I'm struggling to come up with one that's really out there. Maybe just because we see them all as viable. But I think it's putting smaller terminals on smaller machines and delivering capabilities at price points that enable access for users that would have seen satellite as being out of reach in the past. So I think it's about broadening that portfolio of capabilities, both on the hardware and the service side. But probably as sort of a last point on my side, the piece I haven't spoken about enough is we go to market through exclusively through channel solution partners. And those solution partners have a wide range of capabilities. I think what becomes even more important on the other end of this equation that starts with broadening the hardware portfolio to meet a wider range of customers is also then having the right partners with the right skill sets and access to those key verticals that deliver the over-the-top capabilities that use the connectivity to enable a wide range of services for the customers. So I think the partnerships are critical for us to have access to these markets.
Fantastic. Well, I'll leave it there. I know it's a really exciting topic, and I know Intelsat's got a very bold approach here, and I wish you and your team the best of luck with it this year. Obviously, we hope to be talking to you throughout the year. I just want to say thank you for your time today, and we look forward to catching up with you again soon.
Yeah, thank you. Appreciate the opportunity.